Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Chestnut Hill Commercial Area Study Committee Advisory Group meeting of December 11th, 2025. We're going to do something a little bit different for this meeting as following the request of well, Martin in particular, but I'm perfectly happy to have that. Excuse me, to have that request. I think it's actually a pretty good idea. So we'd like to have, sort of for lack of a better term, a back and forth, an opportunity for people to hear just a little, just hear a summary of where we think we are, and then respond to that with questions, and we'll see if we can have a discussion as opposed to simply getting a comment from members of the public and then sometimes responding, sometimes not, but going on from there. And particularly, I think people have felt like the discussion or the public comment period at the very end hasn't given them much time to for that kind of exchange, that kind of back and forth. So is that a reasonable characterization of what? Okay, good. So excuse me. I think it's important to remember that what the task of this study group is to help staff put together a zoning amendment that would go to town meeting, and as a what we're hoping for, what we're expecting, not hoping for, but actually expecting, is that town meeting will get that in May of 2026. And zoning is not design. Zoning is zoning. It's what setbacks need to be, what step backs need to be, how much green space there is. It has nothing to do with building design. And I know that there's a whole second step when it comes to what a building actually looks like once it is designed to fit in within that zoning. The task of putting together a zoning amendment relates to allowing something that allowing zoning that will result in commercial development of the property that we're looking at, which runs almost from Hammond Street over to Hammond Farm Parkway. So the entire district. If the zoning doesn't work financially for the owners of that property, then really we failed in terms of putting together a proper zoning amendment. If town meeting gets that zoning amendment, it's then its responsibility then is to decide whether or not to go forward with it, and they'll make that judgment. But our job really is to put together a zoning that will work. And so, where are we in that process? We have a proposal that, to some extent, has shaped the zoning that we've come up with, and to some extent, the zoning that we've come up with, I think, has reshaped the proposal. And the proposal for the Chestnut Hill Office Park area is for a 7-story building on the west end, 12-story combination of 2 stories of retail and 10 stories of medical office building, building B.
8 stories.
I beg your pardon.
8 stories.
8 stories.
Parking.
And parking, sorry. And that is within the building. And 14 stories a hotel and 8 stories condominium on top of a 6-story hotel. If this doesn't go through a town meeting, and then it's very difficult to know exactly what will happen. Perhaps nothing whatsoever. The property may be relet. The developer may decide to sell. They may decide to go in the direction of a 40B, which might give us something that has the look of the building at the corner of Hammond Street and Boylston Street that's being constructed now. We don't know. The one thing I would say is that I know that height has been a major question, especially at the 14-story end of things. And when you look at the numbers, the square footage that of the various kinds of development various kinds of use that we're contemplating and that the developer's contemplating. If you squeeze down on the top, you bulge out the rest of the rest of the development, and so you lose some of the open space, you lose some of the opportunity to circulate traffic entirely within the development. You actually lose a number of things that the neighborhood has expressed a great deal of interest in, and that I think would actually make for a very attractive end result. Just the same, we want to hear what people have to say and have a discussion back and forth about the finances and the look of things and so forth, in a way that makes you feel that you've not just been heard, but been listened to. And we hope that you'll also listen to the responses. So with that, those are my opening remarks. Michael, do you want to add something about where we are in terms of dollars and cents? And
sure.
A couple of other things.
Let me add a couple of things, both on the finances. The first thing to say about the finances, Blair Hines and I had a back and forth communication earlier this week, and I'll reference some of the things in that. But one of the things that I said is that the Chestnut Hill commercial area is not the be all and end all of solving the town's fiscal challenges, but it is a significant opportunity, and the town and the charge of this study is to really leverage that opportunity. The current modeling that the town has commissioned and is using indicates that the net fiscal impact of just the Chestnut Hill Office Park proposal is about $5.6 million per year, and I want to make sure that is after taking into account all of the expenses to the town from the people and businesses who would occupy that space. And it also takes into account the amount of money that we're currently getting from the parcels in Chestnut Hill Office Park. The net fiscal impact is on top of all of those things of about $5.6 million. And one of the other significant financial impact is something that we'll be talking about later in the agenda, which is the negotiated payment to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. As many people have talked about over recent years, affordable housing is a significant challenge for the town, and the $10.93 million payment over the sale of the condos within the Chestnut Hill Office Park proposal is going to be a significant boost for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and the Housing Advisory Board has the capacity to leverage that money to make a significant impact on affordable housing within Brookline. So those are sort of the two big financial impacts that we are working on, as well as other infrastructure improvements and other sort of negotiated agreements between large developers in the entire study area and the town in order to deal with things like transportation, infrastructure, etc. I wanted to quickly pivot on just to respond to a few things that we've heard. You know, all of us have been fielding, having conversations with various members, both of the public and the advisory group. And there were 4 or 5 themes that came up that I just wanted to share. One Mike had already mentioned was this question of height. And Mike mentioned one of the challenges of height, which is in order to get the density necessary, both to realize the commercial activity and the economic development of the space, as well as the financial benefits the economic viability of development itself. If you lower the height, then you have to increase the width or the depth of buildings. And there's been a lot of work and a lot of agreements around constraining things like setbacks and stepbacks and open space and interior circulation, et cetera. So I just want to recognize that we have heard that concern, and we are still listening to that concern. The second one that I want to raise is a question of process. The Chestnut Hill Commercial Area Study Group has been going on now, I think, for about 21 months. This project has been worked on, and there have been a series of meetings in which people have gotten information. That information has been taken both by the staff and by the developers who've been involved. And this iterative process of taking that information, responding with new proposals, iteratively through these last 21 months, I think has been very helpful to get to the point where we are. If you consider where we were many months before I got involved with this project, I was hearing things about 20-story buildings right on top of neighborhoods, and those things are in the past. And where we are is, in the present with the proposal that we have. So I just want to recognize that this iterative process has allowed us to incorporate feedback. And I realize that it's not necessarily people having their eyes on the paper as the pen goes. There we go. But I just want to recognize that we've heard those things. And Mike has mentioned some other things, and I think I'll let it go there. But Michael, why don't we open it up?
Yeah,
from that?
sure. Okay, so
I just had 3 clarifying questions.
Yeah.
With the neighborhood. One of them is, are we going to be talking about, when you're talking about zoning, are we talking about the Chestnut Hill Realty, the City Realty lots, or are we talking about the whole area?
no, we should be talking about the whole area. That's our
Okay, so
job.
that-
Yeah,
I think we should make that clear.
yeah.
So the second question is the financial numbers that were just thrown out.
Right.
That's for the whole area, or is
No, that's
No,
just,
that's just for the- and that's just if all the phases are completed?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the third question, and I think that's just for the neighborhood, is now that you've seen all the different parts and sort of the timeline and everything, if you were to prioritize your concerns with the neighborhood, say, for example, traffic on Heath Street or height or whatever it is, would you change the priorities of what you've said in the past? Because I don't think you've been given a chance to say, well, yes, we like the traffic on Heath Street not to go there, or we would like the open space or something. But when you look at the whole picture, you're saying, well, if it was lower, then you could have less open space, or we could get some traffic on Heath Street. If you could, when you're talking about this, if you could sort of prioritize a little bit all those concerns that you've had over the last 21 months. Great, thanks.
Great. Okay. Martha, do you want to take the baton and go from here?
I appreciate, well, I'll take a stab at it.
All right. Good.
I think that the challenge, I appreciate your question, Carlos, about identifying priorities, which I think we have done. It's the narrowness of the conversation back and forth. If you give us this, what does this eliminate? Well, let me think again because it's hardly ever the case that you can do a one-time pass at that. So I feel boxed into a corner a bit, given the kind of constraints of that question. So not sure where to go from there. I think there's agreement that it is 12, 14 stories is too high. And what does too high mean? why is it too high? Because we can't see the birds, you know? No, it's not because of that. It is inconsistent with the development along the corridor of Route 9. And it's inconsistent within that neighborhood. Like what would be consistent? Like 6, 7 stories, that would be consistent. That's the character of that part of town, not just in that immediate area, but more broadly. So that's what height looks like. That's what the height of, like, if we're getting into, and yes, I understand we have to get into the details of it, like that's the 6, 7 stories would be consistent currently in the neighborhood. Now, I think the neighborhood's gone along with like, well, gotta be more than that, so we can entice developers, or, you know, we can increase the economic commercial tax to the town. Okay. So that's where it starts. It doesn't start with 20 down. It starts with 5 or 6 up. That's what it starts with. And so 5 or 6 up goes up to like 10. So that's a pretty big jump. So it is interesting, I think, and you know, where your brain is. It's like, the brain isn't 20 stories down. It's what, you know, what's consistent with the neighborhood and also is reasonable. And that was a reasonable, let's remind ourselves again, that was a reasonable height, given the study that was part of this committee's discussion from RKG. I believe that I have that properly right. So, and one of the derangements that has certainly been challenging is a developer coming in with other ideas. I'll just like capture that. So others?
Let me just build on that thought. Blair Hines, 745 Keith Street for the record. So underlining the whole point of the initial studies that were done through this committee, assisted by RKG, you didn't hear any trouble from the neighborhood about that. We recognized it needed to be upzoned. We knew that this was in the town's picture going back 2005. I remember being informed about how important this was, talking to Paul Singer way back then when I first got on the planning board. So we're aware of that. And, you know, the neighborhood had gone a long way from, you know, what we would prefer, which is more consistent with what's already there, to recognize there are important town needs. And I think the neighborhood has come a long way to say, okay, we've got to accept more height than we want. And for the interests of more housing and more commercial development, I think the neighborhood, you know, found, you know, maybe we're happy to hear what EDAB subcommittee had to say and analyze, and an analysis of the existing zoning would not provide for redevelopment. It needed to have more FAR and more height. So we're going with you on this stuff. And the question is, how far do we go and what's reasonable? And I think one thing that's really important is that this site, and thank you, Michael, for saying it ahead of time, shouldn't be the one place that's going to solve the town's housing and commercial development. So it would seem to me that there should be some other areas of town on the docket too, for more housing and more commercial use. And so that it becomes a town-wide approach. That would certainly make the pill easier to swallow. So I don't know where this is going, but I just want to, as a concluding comment, state that initially we were included in the process, giving ideas and making recommendations. And then we would have, if we had continued in that process, there would have been new zoning passed a year ago. But the whole process got interrupted where our input just became reactive, not really positive. And this is the first time that we've had a Chestnut Commercial Area Study meeting that's based about, okay, what do you think here, guys, as opposed to being negative. So thank you for having this meeting. And I really hope we can come up with a plan that we can hold our nose and get behind and pass town meeting.
Okay. I'm not quite, honestly, I'm not quite sure where to go from here, except to say, invite comments from any other members of the public to begin with, but Joe or, you know, go ahead.
I'm Bonnie Bullock, 717 Heath Street.
Yeah.
Grew up in Brookline. Joe did too. It's the height that is way out of line, way out of line. Anybody I talk to that grew up in Brookline and didn't grow up in Brookline and goes along there and says, that's ridiculous. It does not fit in with the neighborhood and it's gonna be ugly. And I'm sorry that we worry about a developer making a profit. I'd rather worry about our neighborhood in Brookline. And I always say my parents' house was sold. The town gets more money because now there's 2 condos there. And that happened out our backyard, 1 single family house, 2 condos there. And so the town is getting more tax money from a lot of things like that. But it's the height that is wrong.
Well,
Questions? And let's see if we can have a bit of dialogue about it.
I think one of the things that was mentioned, which is sort of interesting, is where you start.
Mhm.
Like if you start here, or you start there, and I just thought that maybe. So if you say you start at 6 or 7,
Mhm.
maybe the other 3 are community
Benefit.
benefit. Like the community saying, we don't need a park, we don't need
Mhm.
other things like other benefits that are provided, but we'll give you the height. And in exchange for sort of like in other cases would be the park or whatever the community
Yeah.
benefit there is.
Yeah.
Because when you look at a lot of the projects that are being built not in necessarily this area, but in Newton, for example, I think you are right of the heights that the range of heights that you're seeing.
Mhm.
Yes, you go to Somerville and Assembly Square, the new buildings are much higher than the first phase of Assembly Square, but
Mhm.
the Assembly Square itself is about 6 to 7 floors
Mhm.
in height.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, I think that's an interesting
Mm.
idea to see
Yeah.
as a community benefit.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good way to put it.
To build on that, both Michaels were saying, if you come down, you squish things out a little bit. From conversations I've had with some of the neighbors, they'd rather give up some of the green space and have a lower building. I don't think they see themselves hanging out in there anyway. So green space is mostly a benefit for the people that are going to be living in that particular area. So, I don't, to say it's going to get squashed and spread out, that's not necessarily a negative thing, I think, for the neighborhood.
So you're not reducing the FAR because the FAR is still a certain number.
Yeah.
You're just spreading it throughout the site.
I'd like to hear that actually from you folks.
I think that I think we also think the traffic issue is it's certainly very complicated.
Yeah.
And with gridlock that goes on Route 9, that depending on how much more development we have here, it's gonna be a very frustrating situation for whoever lives there. Because of where you put the cars, and it already gets very troubling in the morning, particularly on Heath Street. And so, yes, traffic is going to be a major problem and will be a major problem and needs to be carefully thought of. Now, does that mean that you couldn't have cars that go out onto Tully Street? Sure, you could have something like that. But right now, what we have, which I think is really problematic, is the fact that you have this little sliver of land that's for parking right now. And it seems to me that if you were just thinking about it from an urban design standpoint, what would be the ideal place for the hotel would be on the corner. And, and I understand that there's some property issues here, but maybe part of the thing that the town needs to do is incentivize a cooperation there by having some type of step up. You get some additional benefits there by having something that brings the hotel to the corner. So both parties have something at stake because they both have value added if they cooperate. That's an idea out there. The other idea I'd like to see in here, since I guess we got to get it on the table, is that I think it's really important, given this whole need for economic viable development, that if we're passing this overlay, that there should be some kind of sunset if nothing happens to the zoning. You know, that if the proposition is, we need this extra FAR because other than that, nothing happens. Well, that seems to me it has a corollary that if nothing happens, then maybe there's some take back that that a certain part of the zoning should be time limited so that we actually get a development here. Because you're asking a lot of this neighborhood in terms of swallowing a lot of density, inevitably traffic. So if the idea is that this is really good for the town, well, let's make sure it happens. And so
We
I
just
think
did
that
that.
should be in agreement of understanding. So that there's some kind of bifurcation in zoning.
Travis, you want to comment on that?
We just did that at
At Clark Road.
Park Road, where there is a time limit on when. If
When they
things
need to, it needs to
needs
happen.
to- yeah.
We have had some discussions about, amongst ourselves about, well, okay, how do we assure ourselves that not just one phase, but all of the phases get built, get to go forward? And that's still a matter of negotiation. The issue with Tully Street, as you mentioned, is that the parking lot is owned by the growth companies, and
I know
gentlemen here from the
that. I
growth companies.
mentioned something to them as well about this.
Right.
Not surprised.
I have a question for you. Would you, so if that happened, if the hotel was shifted that, like 90 feet or so further over, would more height be a possibility? Is that an absolute, you know, what?
More than what?
Well,
More than
well,
what? Like
So
what?
let's say that would be an interesting point as the discussion continues, but it seems to me that one of the advantages of what happens if the hotel is in the corner is, of course, you could have an easier offloading of maybe it's the services that have to go in to come off of Tully. And George, you're shaking your head, so you obviously have some thoughtful comment here.
Making that thought. Comment. It just, you're going into the realm of fantasy. You know, the growth companies is dependent on the Tully Street lot for parking for all their commercial space. That's not gonna dissolve. They can't give it up.
There's
Even
other
in the,
There's other, I mean, why couldn't they put parking, maybe that's where part of the train is, part of the parking. If you next to like 100 feet of walking onto this site.
I mean, in an ideal world where they didn't have to generate, have parking for 2 years while this new parking was being built. Sure, but
I said,
you're really talking about a hypothetical with low probability of
I see.
actual occurrence in the real world.
All right, well, thank you for the realistic feedback.
Oh, Martha, before I just wanted to say one thing about I know that on this committee, this group is focused on advisory group, not committee, focused on the Chestnut Hill development area. The other thing I'm involved in for the town is that I chair the committee that's been looking at Center Street parking lots, Blair. So and we're going to ask the select board to give us authority to go out to put out a request for expressions of interest from developers to construct on the Center Street lot, the main part of the Center Street lot, Center Street East lot, a garage, an open plaza, and housing. And so as far as I'm concerned, this is not the only thing by a long shot that
That's
we're
great.
trying to do. And of course, we do have Waldo Durgan sitting out there at some point. I think the one thing you have to recognize is that there aren't a lot of spaces available for large scale commercial development. And there are only so many things that the planning department can do at any one time. And so there's a sequence that has to be followed here, but it's not a matter of saying, well, we're going to solve our problems by doing this in Chestnut Hill. It's not actually. There was an article in Brookline.News today that the town is looking at a $16 million deficit between schools and operations, town operations that needs to be covered either by cuts or by an override. And that's even an override that covers that just postpones the next override. So we're in this constant structural deficit, and we're very interested in commercial development, not just here, but in a lot of places, wherever we can get it. Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, so I would to address both of those issues, I want to kind of challenge the gospel of an FAR 4. I also want to challenge the decision about the 51% commercial development, because it seems directly contradictory that if we keep talking about how great a place this is for commercial development and we restrict it to 51% and we don't demand more, it doesn't make sense. It makes no sense. So increasing the amount of commercial in the zoning, which is what we're talking about, this constant, we have a developer, he has an idea, and like we need to cater to that. Yes, but the idea of the zoning is a kind of, okay, it's not in perpetuity, but it's some reflection of planning and commitment in the town. And I think both of those things, the FAR and the commercial, need to be examined or at least more discussed.
You
The
understand that
FAR,
the 51% is not a ceiling, it's a floor.
yeah, and I think it should be higher. The floor should be higher.
Okay, all right. It sounded like you thought it might be a ceiling. Okay.
No, I did.
Yeah.
Mike, I don't think the Center Street project is fair, because what was proposed there is it's 6 stories.
Yes, that's right.
And
Although we actually backed away from something that was,
well, it was much more, but it was
Very high,
stepped back.
yeah.
So if a developer is gonna come and do this.
Yeah.
Then
Thank you.
it's like, this is commercial, I mean, I just don't know what message it sends.
Right.
There's ground floor commercial, but it's the residential is the.
the residential is the key thing.
Yeah.
here.
Wow,
The
imagine
residential is a
16
big-
stories
right.
there where there's actually a lot of T stops available and commercial there to support, a 12-story building, that's all housing, that's got the amenities there. Holy crow.
Okay,
Mike, Mark Cirillo.
yeah, I'm about to get to that.
Thanks.
So I have two requests for people online. Mark, I know has to leave at 7:30, so go ahead, Mark.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mike. I just had one question, and that was how we had a presentation from Sasaki the other day, the last meeting.
Yeah.
How integrated with the zoning change that this committee would be proposing, would that urban design substance be in terms of circulation and open space and the kinds of things that we might want to see as amenities, within the context of this whole area? I mean, I would think that we would want to propose, which was some of the ideas that came through when everyone took a shot at looking at what they might do for land use and building placement. When we first started the project, if you recall, we had that big thing at the golf course for people to have input in the process. And I was just thinking, and I've said it, this isn't the first time I've said it, and that is that I think that the town needs to step up and create an urban design for this whole area. And if you did that, and we did have, let's say, a 4.0 height or a 4.0 FAR allowance in different areas, then you might come up with a different perspective as to what this project or a project would look like in this area if we actually took the bull by the horns and came up with an urban design.
So Mark, we're going to have one of the next item on the agenda is a report on draft design guidelines from Sasaki, and we'll have an opportunity to get a better sense of what you're asking about, but it's a very sensible question. Katha Seidman is online and would like to speak. Katha, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Katha Seidman. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 2, which is near Coolidge Corner. I'm on the Brookline Arts Commission and a board member of Brookline for Everyone, though I'm speaking here only for myself. And unfortunately, I have to leave soon to attend another meeting, so I won't listen, unfortunately, any more of this discussion. While I generally support the redevelopment of City Realty's large lot on Chestnut Hill West, I want to highlight the importance of the broad community benefits of the open space provided within this project. This development replaces a large, underutilized, and non-functioning area with new homes and active commercial space. As we learned in the Coolidge Corner Parking Lot Committee's public forum at the Coolidge Corner Theater, providing a well-designed public plaza makes possible the kind of street-level vitality that will make this area a destination for both neighbors and outside visitors for decades to come. Beyond the plaza itself, the proposed tree cover on the public plaza and the edge-defining open spaces will seamlessly integrate the new development with the existing neighborhood. If we want to support sustainable living and reduce car dependence, this is exactly the kind of feasible, well-designed new development Brookline should encourage. And while I understand that 14 stories seems out of scale with what exists nearby, my actual resident experience living near many tall buildings is defined by the tree canopy plaza, the shaded sidewalks, and the design of the ground level residences, offices, and shop windows that make every walk an engaging experience. To maintain project viability of an FAR 4 would sacrifice public open space with a larger footprint. Reducing height would sacrifice the number of trees and amount of open space and make the street level experience more isolating, repetitive, and canyon-like. Besides providing appropriate public open space for residences, neighbors, and visitors, we all have heard about what the project can provide for the town. In addition, the project proposes to Brookline has neglected to add the kind of housing our growing population and our economy needs for the past 50 years. The development of this and other large sites was identified in our last comprehensive plan 20 years ago. It's well past time to permit the revitalization of this large site and, of course, others across our town, so it can produce new revenue while providing significant additional housing, including deed-restricted affordable homes, along with vital commercial activation with many public amenities, making this a project all residents of Brookline should support. I urge this committee to recommend this proposal to town meeting. Thank you.
So that's an interesting segue that I had planned on, because I was just thinking about some of the comments about, well, the ideal would be 6 or 7 stories, because indeed that would be fitting with the area. And some other comments about the building that's under construction at the corner of Hammond and Boylston Street, which I think and that's a 40B, so we had very little control over setbacks, if any, and we see the results of that lack of control. The site that we're talking about, the Chestnut Office Park, is about 5 acres. 5 acres is about 20,000 square feet. 200. I beg your pardon, 200,000 square feet. I'm sorry, 200,000 square feet. If you have an FAR, right now the FAR is 2.5, and we've been told by the Economic Development Advisory Board that that's not sufficient to allow for economically viable development. You might very well find that if you allowed an FAR of 4, you'd have something on that site that looked an awful lot more like what you don't want to see any more of than the design that's been proposed, with the open space and the internal circulation of traffic and so forth, that I think you reference, you don't want to see that height. You don't care about the interior space and so forth, but I think you might be very disappointed in the consequences of going in the other direction. And reduce, as I say,
Mike,
you
it's-
push down the
It's a
top.
different size. It's a
Squeeze
different
things out.
size.
Pardon me?
I mean, it's a different lot. You wouldn't. A developer would not do something that doesn't sell.
No, of course not.
The one on the corner that we're talking about, it's actually not that bad. It's the only thing that is a little
I'm
iffy
listening
about
to
it.
people.
Let me just finish. The only thing that it's a little bit iffy about it is that they didn't set back from the sidewalk, so the sidewalk's pretty narrow.
Yeah.
But it has good step up back from the triple decker next door. It doesn't end on a wall. It actually has
Yeah.
a series of terraces.
Right.
And then it does the highest height is at the corner, as a curved corner. But for example, the back bay, all the corners are higher.
Yeah.
So and then it has, to the commercial side, it has the height, because it's expected that those commercial buildings are going to go higher.
Yeah.
So it's actually responding to the neighborhood a lot more than something that is at a different scale of the rest.
Well, we have a proposal here for 7 stories, 12
Yes, but-
stories, 14.
But let me give you another
Back in
example.
that same way.
Another example of a very tall building.
Yeah.
1970s, all the buildings that are tall.
Yeah.
Are 1960s, 1970s, the Brook House, all these other ones.
Right.
But for example, the Regent Park, next to the Star Market.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
So that one is 12 stories, I
Yeah.
believe. But not on Beacon Street. On Beacon Street, it's 4 stories. So you have the whole cornice of all the other housing that have about 4 stories.
Yeah.
That goes along. You follow that cornice. And then once you're set back a fair amount on the private street that they have, then it goes up. So when you're actually on Beacon Street, you don't even realize that you have that tall building.
Do you really want to use that building as an example?
It's an
of
ugly
design?
building because of the era of it was done.
Yeah.
Concrete,
Yeah, but the point
but
is a good one.
urban design wise,
Yes.
it's a pretty good damn building.
Yeah.
Because it has the,
Wow, are you speaking for height or against height? Because it sounds like you're speaking for height in that conversation. Beacon Street is a really sensitive location, and what you're saying is a well-massed building can actually mitigate the consequences of height, right?
well,
That's what you're saying, right?
but with reason, right? I mean, so
Sure, with
which
the
is,
design.
but where are we mitigating it here?
Well, I think the answer to that question is that we're mitigating it from west to east.
Yeah.
Specifically in response to the neighborhood, which is why it's.
But the neighborhood's on both sides.
Mm,
We tell
No,
them
the
neighborhood.
Tully Street is commercial across the street.
Well,
It's
there's
a,
residents.
it's a senior,
Assisted.
Oh, that building, okay.
I mean, but you have a whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
But the whole area is being rezoned to be a cohesive commercial and mixed use district. Right?
So you're envisioning 14 stories all the way down Route 9 in that whole corridor?
No.
Like,
No,
but it would be
no,
possible.
no,
But
That's
it would be
no,
possible.
no, it actually would not be possible.
That's not what the zoning
Because
says.
Because the zoning says that there are other subzones that have lower heights.
Well,
But suppose a developer said, I can't do what I need to do here.
Then they
With
go
these
through
types
this
of
painful
limitations,
process.
and this is where we're running into so many barriers, is that we're being asked to contemplate zoning this district in various
Subzones,
subsections. And yet, every time we say we prefer to see less height here, we're told, well, you've got to have this kind of height because we've got a proposal in front of us that simply won't fly unless we have
That's a good question.
our
Yeah, we
14
never had the
story.
height before the proposal.
beyond that, in fact, now that I've got the floor, I wanted to agree with Martha that I think the base of 51% commercial is too low, because we all know that commercial development, assuming the space is occupied, is going to bring in more tax dollars and less demand, I believe, on town services, because it's commercial, not residential.
Yeah.
And lastly, as long as maybe we can continue to talk about what we'd like to see here, I'd like to see more affordable housing in the rental apartment building than what inclusionary zoning requires. Because we're losing, at least as far as the House decision is concerned, we're losing affordable housing in the taller building on site. That affordable housing is going to go someplace else. We don't know where, and we don't know when. And I completely understand, having had a very informative discussion with Roger Blood. I understand completely about the cash and the leverage, and we can get more bang for our buck. But at the same time, I've also heard town meeting and other people say we want affordable housing in all kinds of different neighborhoods. So why not get more affordable units in this development? It doesn't make the building any shorter. It doesn't make the building any taller.
But it does have a significant impact on the economic viability of the development.
But see, now we're back to dealing
The
with this
development.
particular proposal.
No, but not just for the development, also for the town.
But but Conor raises a really interesting point, and you're absolutely right. Say, between Linda and Kyle, you both, I want to comment on both things. Linda, the zoning that's been proposed, basically, it's FAR 4 for the Chestnut Office Park, and across the street for the commercial area, up to about
Holly Lane.
about to Holly Lane, right? At that point, it steps down, and so at that point, you're right, Carla. Would anybody build anything there? Well, the question is, what would they build? If you build housing there, you have a different economic picture than if you're building commercial, because from at least at this stage for of the market, housing is a stronger
Is more economic.
more economically feasible for development at a lower price. That's why you have a 6-story building being
Consider
built.
housing commercial development, because I don't. I consider housing housing.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Do you consider housing to be commercial?
No, it's taxed as residential.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we're saying this area is one of our last chances at really increasing commercial development,
Right.
and we're zoning this next section in such a way that a developer can't put in more, can't use it for commercial space the way they'd like to see it, but could use it for residential, then it seems to me that the town ends up losing on that.
So Carla, you're exactly where I was when we started this analysis in our subcommittee at EDAP. I wanted this to be 100% commercial because that's best tax generating product we could put on the site. And that's what it's zoned today. It's exclusively commercial. There's not residential allowed on the site. So taking that step to allow residential on the site is a big one in and of itself. But then I came from the point of view, well, give them 20% residential, but 80% commercial. The problem now and in the foreseeable future is that commercial development is extremely hard, impossible to do right now. The office market sucks. The lab market is 30% vacant. Medical office is unproven. And about the only commercial development that's doable in the foreseeable future is hospitality, which is often developed in conjunction with residential, which is what the developer's proposing. So we had to take a big gulp in our subcommittee and say, I think we need to allow some proportion of the site to be zoned to be developed as residential, to allow commercial development, which produces a lot of tax revenue, hotels, to go forward. And that was the big goal for us. And, you know, again, we whittled it down to what we felt was the minimum, we were trying to get maximum commercial, but in terms of our own experience and developers' input, it seemed that we sort of settled on a minimum of 51%. And that was a hard goal, but I think if we're going to see development in our lifetimes, it's got to be a combination of commercial and residential. So that's how this came
I'm
about.
glad you said in our lifetime, because my next question was going to be, how long do you assume this current economic situation? I mean, there's going to
There
be a
is so
time.
much commercial space and lab space to be absorbed, and the COVID really changed the whole nature of office, right? I mean, we're going to need a lot less office in the future going forward than we did in the past. Downtown Boston, the financial district is about 20 to 25% vacant. In grade B stuff, it's even higher. A lot of that stuff's going to get converted to residential, hopefully. But there's going to be less commercial space needed. And residential right now is about the only product type that can be developed.
And yet lab space, small lab space seems to be alive and well. Watertown just.
My firm is sitting on 250,000 square feet of lab space empty.
I would consider that large lab space.
Well, no, but I mean, we can divide it into small labs. You know, it's a 30% vacancy rate in lab right now in the Boston metro area.
So I want to wrap this up by 7, and then at the end, we'll have another opportunity to spend some time, and as the agenda says, in public comment, and that's open-ended as far as I'm concerned anyway. I'll stay here as long as people want to talk. But Martha,
Two quick questions.
yeah, go ahead.
One is, what's the FAR in Gateway East? Anybody know?
Gateway East was the infrastructure
Gateway
project.
East.
Which one are you talking about? The Hilton Garden? You're talking about the
No,
hotel? Emerald Island? Yeah.
no, the part that was the children's hospital.
Brookline, we
Up
talked
to
about it.
3.4.
3.4, 3.5, something like that.
Sounds right.
Yeah. Just saying, and you know, with regard to the gospel of 4.0,
Well, can I just put a point of reference in that the 6-story garage did not count against the FAR in that calculation.
Mhm.
And this is something else that I just wanted to observe, that people have talked about the east side of Route 9. The Hilton Garden Inn is a 10-story building, but it has 174 hotel rooms. The proposed hotel for City Realty is 200 rooms. So if you're talking apples to apples, you would be talking about 26 additional hotel rooms plus the parking to accommodate that would easily add 2 or 3 floors to that building. And to Brooklyn Place, you have the developer right next to you there. That was originally proposed to be underground parking, but because of the site conditions and whatnot, that was changed. And in order for that to be redeveloped, it now had to accommodate the reality of allowing a parking garage. And so if you took that parking and put it in the building, like they're talking about in building B, again, that would add to Brookline Place. I don't know how many floors, but it would be significant. So I just want to put us on a apples to apples comparison.
okay. So the second point was, if medical office space is soft in terms of the current market, why are we even thinking about a 12-story medical office space with 2 floors of commercial? Why can't the hotel be part of that space, like increase the size of the hotel and bring it down?
So
There's some stories.
a couple of points, and the first to answer to your question, of course, is building B is not 12 stories of medical office space, right? It is 2 stories of retail,
Yes.
right? And then parking and then medical office space on top of that. So that's one point. The second point is that any particular use, right, has, you have to be able to sell that use, right? That applies to a medical office, that applies to hotels, residences, whatever you're gonna build, right? And one of the constraints in terms of hotel is like how much hotel space, event space, et cetera, can you actually build and then sell? So for example, this is what the owners of properties get to decide, if I am the owner of a property and I think I can sell 200, but I can't sell 250, then I'm not gonna build 250. Right? And so that's not really a question of zoning. It goes to the question when we are trying to determine economic viability, certainly informs our understanding of economic viability, but it doesn't, we don't in the zoning say, your hotel has to be a certain size. That's, our use table in the zoning code has all sorts of different options.
So, is that an
No,
answer?
no, no, I don't understand.
So it's not an answer.
If it's not, if we're not, somebody help me out there, if you understand my confusion. If we're not talking height, then why are we saying there's a 14-story hotel going there? When we're, by talking about zoning, you have some opportunity to manipulate what happens on a site, in more gross terms.
Let me just help out Megan on this, which is that, since the housing component is one of the drivers for making this economically viable to redevelop. And I know that the hope is that you can get 51% commercial. So maybe what should also be on the table here as a trade-off is that if the medical office really is kind of a weak market and it's a lost leader, so to speak, that they're dumping money into the space that they're creating that really doesn't get rented. Well, maybe the only thing that's viable right now in this area is the hotel and housing. And so maybe that's one way that, you can create a viable redevelopment. I know it's not ideal because we're not getting as much commercial, although the hotel is the best commercial that you can get since you have room tax and restaurant income. And that therefore the housing need, which is strong, and, having gone to those comprehensive planning meetings, I know that that's something that's pretty universally supported in town. Neighborhood is,
So are you actually arguing for a lower commercial percentage?
well, I would argue for that if that got us a little bit lower on the heights. Because now, I know that this whole idea of going up to 10 stories is something that the neighborhood is, was not thinking about a year ago. But when the RKG was showing something like 8. But I think that 10 stories or something like that, maybe that's the trade-off, Michael, that you were looking for, like what's the give and take? So it's a little bit of, small commercial maybe, and it's a hotel and it's and that the housing has a little more prominence, and that makes the development work.
I think it's, one of the things that Michael said, it's really important to emphasize, and I think a developer would agree with this, George, I would invite your comment as well. That there's only so much market for a hotel on the site. The developers looked at it and said, well, this is the number of rooms that makes the most sense. And if you feel like you have more, I won't make that flashback. You have to recognize that if you say, well, let's just make the hotel bigger, okay, you can make it shorter and broader. As I say, you push your hand down on it and it squashes out. And if you then took up some of the space of the medical office building, yes, that would work. What you would lose is the value of the top floors of the condominium building, condominium part of the hotel. So the hotel is 6 stories. It's not 14
It's
Right.
four stories.
4 stories.
It's 4 stories?
It's 4 stories.
It's 4-story.
All right, 2 stories. I'm including the parking in the hotel.
But part of the parking is for the conference.
Right, okay, but it's 8, the point is that it's 8 floors of condos. If you have fewer floors and less height for those condos, you get a different economic picture for it.
Right.
So it's all a matter of, there are trade-offs that a developer has to make, there are trade-offs that I think we have to make.
But I just, well, there's so many things out there.
Yeah, there are a lot.
Yeah, there are.
That's the
Yeah.
trouble.
Yeah.
No, and one of the things that actually would, and maybe this is a question for George or for Edab, which is, so if in your lifetime, my lifetime maybe, if labs and offices and commercial as we know it, other than retail, is not a viable,
At the
it's
moment,
not happening.
yeah, at the moment.
No, we're saying now for the next 20 years.
Well, no, I don't think anybody said it.
George is gonna be 20. the last 20 years.
Putting an
Okay,
exclamation.
say 15 years, whatever it is. Say it's
5, okay?
No, if we're only, are we talking about 5?
Yeah, well, I don't know, I'm not, I can't.
But say it's 10 years or so.
Yeah, all right.
Then that means that our whole view of how commercial tax is gonna help this town fiscally.
Yeah.
Is not even happening,
Because
because
it depends on the commercial.
what
depends on
commercial is
what-
that?
Commercial.
What commercial is that? We just said the hotels, it's really good, but how many can you have?
Exactly. Or how many can you have in a particular
There
place?
is retail, which is we're putting on the ground floor.
Yeah.
Office building, regular office done,
Yeah,
medical office, maybe. Labs, no way.
Yeah.
What's left?
it's a good question.
So then, if that's
Making me
the,
cry.
but wait, Mike, if that's the case.
Yeah.
Then we need to revamp the whole strategy here that commercial is gonna get us out of the hole.
Well,
We're basically saying right now that the commercial, we missed the train of commercial
I missed the chain of lab.
and offices and hotels. I mean,
Well,
we missed
that's-
most of the commercial.
I mean, that's before our lifetime.
So
That was missed.
So we're gonna do housing, which is gonna make Mariah's job harder, unless you don't run again, then. it'll
I
be a
guess you haven't been
different
reading Brookline News.
story. So,
What do we know that?
so then, like Stop and Shop, ComAb.
Yeah.
All that is just gonna be retail with housing.
TJ Maxx.
Well, most likely mixed use in that general, generally speaking, that's
So
probably.
we're never gonna get to the 50.
So I guess can I ask a follow-up question,
Yeah.
which has been puzzling me, because why are they putting the medical office in? Is there any other reason than to achieve the 51%?
So medical office at least has a glimmer, I think, of potentially getting developed because of the LMA's expansion along Route 9, as you can see it, Brigham and
Yeah.
Women's and Dana-Farber are all, and honestly, patients prefer not to go into the LMA.
Yes.
So I think the strategy of this developer or a smart developer would be to say, I've got an office building potentially zoned here. LMA users, would you be interested? And if an LMA user stepped up, then
Just
I
like
think
they have
that.
at Wegmans and along that whole, and even on the other side of the street above, there's New England OBGYN, which used to be in Brookline.
Exactly, so I think it's pretty good, I mean, it's like
So it's the
primo
exception to the
medical
rule that
office.
we're talking
It's
about.
kind of the exception because
Okay.
it's such an exceptional location for that.
Yeah, it's the medical office in that location is a different situation than medical office somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, it's important to differentiate.
Yeah.
Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater of
Exactly.
what's happening in. or
To
a subtle
Mariah's
piece, yeah.
point, what's happening is that group practices are siphoning, they're leaving the big hospitals because the conditions under which they work have been less than optimal. And so I've always thought that this would be an area that would welcome, because now they're going out to Wellesley. Well, wouldn't it be better to be in Chestnut Hill than out in Wellesley, which is where my daughter's group practice left Brookline and went out to. So I think Mariah's right, that if creative thinking might make this a viable option. I think to do like a standard medical office, maybe not.
So,
Okay, so,
I think this developer's fairly clever because he's sort of packaged the commercial in the two most viable areas you could develop in the foreseeable future. That is hotel, high-end hotel, and medical office somehow tied to the LMAC. I mean, I think it's pretty smart.
Okay, so,
Plus retail.
Plus retail, of course.
we need to take a break here because we have, folks from Suzaki, we have a couple of other things that we have on the agenda, and we do need to get to those things. And we'll come back to this. As I say, I think I speak for Michael. We'll stay here until we're done. Okay, the next thing, I beg your pardon. What do we got?
That was Michael.
Oh, okay. All right, the next thing on the agenda is indeed discussion of the draft design guidelines from Suzaki. So take it away, and thank you for your patience.
Okay. We're having technical difficulties because my computer has been frozen since 6:15. So I don't know who's operating the Zoom right now. I'm afraid about what's gonna happen.
Like,
try
what
to
you said, Rebecca.
Is there a
co-host?
Is there a co-host?
There is not. There is not a co-host.
Who is the host, do you know?
I can see eyes blinking, so.
And you can't do it.
You're still lost.
There's an error hiding.
Can you do it from the screen?
All I can say is it's never
You
happened.
do it from that thing. Isn't it a?
I don't think the screen is a good. I will try. That's good idea. I mean, the other risk is
I know.
I could try to restart the Zoom and then people would have to rejoin. Okay, so meeting participants, I'm gonna try to reboot the Zoom and then log back in like 2 minutes. Okay,
All right,
thank you. Sorry about that.
2-minute break, everybody. stay
Veterinary
quiet.
office.
Can we use the bathroom? Can we use the bathroom? Yeah. well, Okay. I want everybody to have one to like.
So, do you want me to turn this in?
Yeah.
I don't think. No, wait.
And I don't know.